had smuggled into his prison cell a cyanide capsule. Either that or he ate a lot of apples. He had smuggled into his prison cell a cyanide capsule, which he ingested and died, leaving 10 Germans awaiting the gallows. According to Life magazine and Time magazine, on October 18th, I believe, 1946, all 9 of the first 10 died quietly as German officers. The 10th, a man by the name of Julius Streicher, the editor of Der Stürmer, an anti-Semitic, virulent, hateful magazine, as well as an individual who had murdered personally men, women, and children, was dragged, screaming and kicking, wild-eyed and hysterical, to the gallows, yelling Heil Hitler. And when his neck was placed into the rope, he looked up and he said, "I am going to God," and looked at the Jewish accusers and said, "Purim Fest, 1946. And the magazine proceeds to tell us that Purim is a Jewish holiday. Of course, it was several months before. If you look at, and here it doesn't come out in print so well, but maybe we can see it anyway, on page 117, it's much more pronounced than the real parchment. In listing the 10 sons of Haman, there are 3 letters that are written small. Again, you cannot see it so well here. It looks like there's another letter that's written small here, but if you look at a parchment, you'd see it well. Could you see those 3 letters? Tough. What's the next one? Shin. No. It's the same. The Zion at the end. There are 3 letters that are written small there. And again, you can't see it so well in this book. If you look at a parchment of a Megillah, if you look at the parchment of the Megillah, you'll see it much better. There are 3 letters written small. Taf, Shin, Zion. And until recently, till our modern history, we had no idea why. Why did Esther write those 3 letters small? Rav Weissmandl pointed out, as Rav Weissmandl was one of the heroes of the Holocaust, pointed out that October 18th, 1946, Hoshana Rabbah, the day that Streicher and the other 10 descendants of Haman, of Germania, were killed and hanged, was the Hebrew year Taf Shin Zion. Now, in looking at all of this, which is formidable, one can easily say, where's God in all of this book? Not at all. Not mentioned. But if you see the 35 or 40 coincidences that take place in Meggilah of Ester, strongly and intimately described, you have to be blind not to see the hand of God every step of the way. Why the name for Purim as Purim? Well, I guess it would be strange. There's already a holiday called Easter, from them, so you couldn't call it that. But why Purim? Why is that such a central theme? What does the word Purim mean? The lots, right? The Purim was the lottery system that Haman used to try to pick a date to destroy the Jewish people. Why did Haman pick through a lottery system? Why didn't he do what was most logical? You check with the army, you check with the police, find the best, most efficient time to round up the Jews and destroy them, and do it. Why did he leave it to a lottery? Because he was making a point. His fight with the Jews was that there's no God. Everything in the world is up to chance. It's all possibility or probability. It's all happenstance. That's why we celebrate Purim as Purim. Because our answer to the lottery is that however it falls, God casts the final die. Esther min haTorah minayin is a statement. Esther in the Torah, where is she? She's in the midst of the rebuke of the Jewish people, when Jews start acting as non-Jews. And again, the sole reason in the late 1700s that Jews were urged to take off mitzvahs, to take off our kippot and our tzitziot and the laws of kashrut and to violate Shabbat, there was one reason given: to be like them. And if you're like them, they'll accept you and love you. And unfortunately, like in the Haggadah, you start out with the wicked generation, then you start out with the generation, the Tam, the simple generation that don't really understand, till finally you have our generation, she'eino yodea l'she'ol, not even knowing how to ask the question. By and large, we're so ignorant of Judaism. Where most people think that, some rabbi says there is Shabbos, another rabbi says there isn't Shabbos, one rabbi says you can drive, one says you can do this, the rabbis argue. We're at the point where we don't even know how to ask the question. We don't know Torah. We don't know. So many are just so lost and ignorant. And even those who know what the word Shabbat means, know a lot more than the lumpen proletariat, so to speak, of the Jewish people. That's how far we've gotten away. One has to have the capacity to see God in strife and confrontation and struggle. And to have the ability, even if you don't know a lot, to look inside of yourself like the word Vayehi. There's woe on the outside, but on the inside is the power of God. We could look at the numerological aspects of the word Vayehi, but there's not enough time. But in a word, the statement of Meggilah of Ester is that there are two ways to view the entire world. Everything's up to chance, or there's a God. And even though God oftentimes is hidden, because if God would come to you and say, do this, so what are you going to say? Well, let's not be hasty, and what do you mean Shabbos, right? Like, when am I going to go to the mall? It's the best sale day. You're not going to say that. But there wouldn't be any confrontation with yourself. If God said to do it and you did it, where's the challenge? The fact that God said it and you have to look for that echo of that voice in the Torah and inside of yourself, and you have to search for it, you have to struggle for it, then the victory goes to those who are able to find it and to live with it and to integrate it into themselves. The old risk-benefit ratio. For a person who looks, who searches, who asks, who learns, what's the risk? Missing the mall on Shabbos? Okay, you get it Sunday. Right? Thank God. The store's open on Sunday too. What's the risk? The pleasures in the world, believe me, when you're 90 years old and sitting in Prentice Manor, those pleasures don't mean all that much. Then you start asking questions to the rabbi, where did life go? I don't understand. I was just a kid. The Torah life, the benefit of the Torah life, I think that a person who has Torah mitzvot and has their family together on Shabbat and has themselves together inside of themselves has easily as much quality of life and as much excitement and joy in life as anybody else. So that's the risk. If all of life is subject to chance, so that's the risk we take. But then it doesn't matter anyway, because then we're all an accident. And we're here today and not here tomorrow. Finished. Well, what about the other way around? What about if it is true? What about if we were made to be searchers? We're made to find God inside of the world and outside of the world and inside of ourselves. What if that's why we were created and we choose to ignore it and just look at the darkness of the veil that surrounds us and say, forget it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to go day to day. The risk of that is to exist without ever having lived. There's the element inside of ourselves as Haman. Haman has the characteristic of building up the primacy of oneself above everything else. For a Jew, our obligation is nistar, to find that which is hidden, and to do it by connecting to God, the people around us, and to ourselves. What does Purim have to do with Yom Kippurim? Yom Kippurim is a day of the soul. The day where the soul, uninhibited, reaches out to God, where we totally ignore the body. We don't bathe it, we don't wash it, we don't give it food. It's like we're angels. We're like beings, souls without a body. On Purim, the celebration of Purim, it's the only time in the Jewish year where we're supposed to get a little high. You know? Unless you're a chassid, you don't do that regularly. Why? Why is there a mitzvah to get a little high? Also a statement of getting beyond the things that inhibit us, to allow us to feel inside of ourselves the joy of finding God, the joy of total connection. Because we all have walls, all of us, things that we're afraid of facing when we close out God. So Purim and Yom Kippurim represent days, opposite ways that they're observed, but days that stand for the total connection of reaching into ourselves to find God. Both extremes of making that type of connection. Very, very different in observance, but the feeling, if you have a good Yom Kippur, and you feel that joy at the end of Yom Kippur, when you're screaming, Hashem Hu Elokim, you can feel God as so close to you. That's the type of joy that one should feel on Purim as well. So there are two opposite ways of approaching the same end, and they're both necessary. Purim, Kippurim, both stand for finding that which is inside of ourselves, nistar, hidden, but certainly worth the effort of making that search. So that, in a word, is the representation of Purim. You can say that it's all up to chance, the world, and we're all a result of some accident. I'm not talking about your parents' accident, I mean on a universal scale. Or you can say there's a reality to my existence, and my job is to look through the Torah, which has illuminated our pathway for 3,600 years, to find, to analyze, and to have that reality of our existence. I've got to stop the tape recording right now, okay? And I know this is not discussion-oriented because I wanted to give a general overview of the Megillah. Did you understand what I was talking about with those three letters, Tav Shin Zayin? That's phenomenal stuff. That's eerie to say. It's longer, yeah. But that's, and you think in the Torah, the Megillah, the Gemara Megillah, talking about the kingdom of Germania that will have 300 princes of Edom, and then the German Federation coming from 300 princes, their own history, and the same word, Germania. That's how you say Germany in Hebrew, Germania. Look at the Talmud, page 6b. You'll see it. So, again, it could all be chance, coincidence. Anything's possible, but not so possible if you're honest with yourself and you keep looking. Next week,